Welcome back everybody to another episode of Direct Comparison. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at the recently released PC version of The Last of Us Part 1 and see how it compares visually to the previous release of the game on the PlayStation 5. For this analysis, the PS5 version of the game will be set to its Fidelity mode, locking performance to 30 FPS at a native 4K resolution. There are, of course, other options available, like a 60 FPS performance mode at a base resolution of 1440p, and an unlocked frame rate option for users with compatible displays. But for the sake of maximizing the potential image quality, we're going to keep the game locked to its Fidelity mode throughout this video. Meanwhile, the PC version is much more flexible, and will be set to a locked 4K resolution with all the graphic settings cranked up as high as possible, and upscaling options like FSR and DLSS disabled. Additionally, both the PS5 and PC versions will have their motion blur and film grain options disabled, in order to provide the cleanest possible images for comparison. Alright, so let's kick this comparison off by first looking at the design and quality of the character models, starting with our lead character, Joel. Now at first glance, there really doesn't seem to be any true difference between these two versions. When using the model viewer, Joel appears virtually identical across the board, with the same geometric complexity, texture maps, shader quality, subsurface scattering, and high quality detail like the tiny individual hairs along his beard and head. It's an incredible looking character model, and as we've discussed in the past, a massive leap technically over the original PS3 and PS4 versions. But you're not going to see that same leap going from the PS5 to PC. This is more or less the exact same game here, and the models appear to have been carried over exactly the same too. When zoomed in extremely close to some details, like Joel's watch, you can just barely make out some sharper texture work, making the numbers along the watch's face stand out more clearly. But other than that, I found practically no difference between the PC version set to its maximum ultra settings and the PS5 version. Ellie is kind of the same deal. The skin tone does look a little bit more colorful, though it's difficult to say if that's the game or just the difference between the two capture methods being used. And just like with Joel, the extremely small details like the texture work on Ellie's clothing, especially the shoelaces, do appear much more clearly. But otherwise, the differences in this character model are just as negligible. In fact, the difference in every character model I tested here was pretty much the same story. You'd be hard-pressed to find an actual distinct visual improvement with the PC version of any character, both in this handy model viewer menu, or with the in-game models themselves. So with that in mind, let's move on now to our next topic, the environments. Like with the characters, the environments of The Last of Us on PC are nearly identical to the PS5. Texture maps for surfaces like brick, wood, and concrete appear a tiny bit crisper, which is brought out further by some advanced ambient occlusion techniques. But the textures themselves, and the thousands upon thousands of little details added on top of them, like foliage, rock, and debris, are retained the same. However, just like with Naughty Dog's previous PC port, the Uncharted Legacy of Thieves collection, there has been a very small bump to the LOD quality of environmental assets, mainly vegetation, allowing more complex 3D objects to be visible at greater distances. It's just not as noticeable as a game like Uncharted, especially when considering how much these long sight lines are regularly obscured by larger details like abandoned cars and trucks. But it is there, and it does help enhance some key wide shots later in the game. Next, we have the lighting. Here we unfortunately do begin to see some pretty significant changes, none of which actually appear to benefit the PC version. First, we have the most glaring problem, the volumetric light shafts. Throughout the course of Joel and Ellie's journey, there's many beautiful environments where light will pour in through dirty window panes or gaps in the wall. With the PS5 version, these light shafts look fantastic, as they seamlessly flow between one another, and are enhanced further by dense dust particles to really help add to the mood of the scene. The PC version does still feature light shafts, but now they feel disjointed and overly sharp along the edges. This creates this really artificial look to them that doesn't look nearly as clean, and can look especially bad in interior areas like this flooded hotel lobby. Another problem is the PC version's screen space reflections, used for some of the more shallow puddles and water surfaces outside. As you can see here, the reflection of the nearby tree line on the PS5 is very nicely detailed, with individual branches and leaves being clearly visible. But the PC version just kind of falls off, with this pixelated, distorted image that fails to reflect the trees in any real capacity. Thankfully, the more advanced real-time reflections used for scenes like this river outside the hotel still look great, and the smaller mirrors found occasionally throughout the game world also look better on the PC. But for whatever reason, the screen space reflections just appear broken right now. As for the rest of the lighting techniques being used, The Last of Us on PC looks roughly the same as the PS5 version, with all the same great bounce lighting and refraction effects that help make interior rooms look so realistic. It's really just the light shafts and screen space reflections that need attention. As for the shadows, The Last of Us on PC does see a few modest improvements here. Shadow resolution has been increased a decent amount for environmental assets like trees and larger objects, while smaller details are enhanced further by screen space shadows to give the environment a tangible depth. The characters' contact shadows have also been improved, with much less visual noise along the edges, most noticeable when viewing the shadows in motion here. Dynamic shadows, like those cast by the player's flashlight on objects, haven't been changed in any discernible way, but otherwise, the shadow quality on the PC is an improvement. Then we get to the effects, where we once again have a strange omission with the PC version. While particle density, gore effects, fire, and other details are mirrored almost exactly, the fantastic water ripples seen all throughout the game do appear to feature less reactivity than before. Players will still witness these great ripple effects as they trudge through puddles, and will see similar effects triggered by AI characters like Ellie. But this ripple dissipates much more quickly on the PC version, causing the water to return to a perfectly still state much faster. This is because the ripple doesn't seem to react to other objects on the surface on the PC, whereas with the PS5, you can see those ripples causing a sort of chain reaction in multiple directions. It was a really cool feature before, but it doesn't appear to be working at its full capacity with this release. In addition to these visual changes, the PC version also suffers from a few other miscellaneous problems that I feel are worth pointing out, as I would like to see these addressed in a future patch. First, there's a bug involving the audio levels when transitioning between gameplay and cinematics. At the time of writing, the volume will drop drastically on the PC version when entering a cutscene, an issue that only seems to occur when I have the game's audio settings outputting through my speakers. When using the headphones and 3D spatial sound, everything sounds perfectly normal. It's just when using the speakers in any configuration that I run into issues. Next, there's the infamous now shader compilation problem. Upon booting this game up, I was forced to wait a lengthy 30-some minutes before this process completed, which is much longer than normal for a shader compilation. This issue has supposedly been identified as having to do with a defective version of the shader building package Oodle that the game mistakenly uses. Though, whatever the reason, I highly recommend bearing with this crazy long shader compilation issue if you desperately want to play this on the PC. Otherwise, you may run the risk of having much worse average performance, stuttering, crashing, and corrupted character model shaders as you play. However, waiting for this process to complete won't completely solve this port's performance woes. Even with a high-end processor and graphics card, my PC struggled to maintain solid performance when playing through this title. Most of the time I was averaging at around 80 to 90 FPS, which isn't too bad and about the performance I'd expect, but upon entering new sections of each level, performance will drop drastically for a little bit as it tries to unpack things like textures and other assets, causing a massive spike in CPU usage that lowers average performance considerably. This makes combat in areas like this one a total mess, and is a key reason why this game just doesn't feel right. The PC version also suffers from extremely long loading times too, almost as long as the old PS3 version, despite having the game installed on a decently fast SSD. And finally, the PC version suffers from an issue with how it handles input from a controller. I tested the DualSense Edge controller on both my PC and PS5, and I can confirm that the dead zone on the PC version recognized by the game isn't the same as the console. You have to push the joystick nearly halfway forward just to get Joel to move sometimes, as opposed to before where you had a much wider range of speed options available. The camera pan is the same way, making it much more difficult to fine-tune your aim in combat. It's serviceable, but I do wish this matched up more closely to the console version, especially when considering I'm using the exact same controller. Finally, let's wrap up with a brief sound comparison. Which version do you feel has the superior audio quality?
You're wasting ammo. We probably should hang on to those. Like that.
That ain't the hard part.
I bet we can cut through those. Down the hall. Through those classrooms.
And that wraps up this episode of Direct Comparison. Overall, The Last of Us on PC is okay, but not particularly amazing. The improvements here are slim to none, with some tiny improvements to things like texture quality, draw distance, and shadow resolution. Other changes, like those made to the lighting effects, have actually hurt the overall presentation, with light shafts no longer blending smoothly, and the screen space reflections don't appear to be working properly. Even the water physics don't seem to be working right, which is a real shame considering how impressive they look on the PS5. And then you have those other issues like the controller dead zones not working as intended, the painfully long loading times, and the major performance issues. If you do happen to have a really high-end enthusiast level build, especially one with a high-end CPU to handle the poor caching method being utilized, then you may be able to brute force your way into enjoying this game, with extremely high frame rates well beyond the capability of the PlayStation versions, without any compromises to resolution. But even with the most top-of-the-line machine, this port just isn't in a complete enough state as PlayStation's previous PC offerings. And I hope all these issues highlighted here today can be addressed, so that PC gamers can finally enjoy this game as intended. But what do you guys think? Are you picking up The Last of Us on PC, or do you prefer the look and feel of the PS5 version? Let me know in the comments section, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this posted every week.